I'm going to take some time here to document this tone control that was put in so I can understand how it was wired in and potentially what capacitors have been added and or bypassed. So I'll go ahead and draw this out, trace everything out. We'll compare it here to the schematic here in just a bit and see what type of circuit changes were made. After spending just a couple minutes here, I think I got the circuit modification figured out. These disc caps in here, I'm going to get those removed anyway because I don't really care for them. But it was a simple modification, so let me show you the schematic first and then we'll switch back over to my hand drawing. Here's the 2A5 tube and the plate is represented here, and again that's pin number 2. And you'll see a capacitor C5 Charlie 5, and you can see it goes to ground. Again, a bypass capacitor to ground. Varying that capacitor value will change the bass or treble of the radio to the output transformer. So what they did, if you look back at the original design, I can't make out C5. Maybe a 0.006 or maybe that's a 0.004. You guys tell me if you can read it. I sure can't. But really it doesn't make much difference, again, at that value. What they've done, they've tied in at C5 here. Let me just pull up my hand drawing here and get this in view where you guys can see it. In plate 2, there's a 0.001 that's tied directly to ground. And then what they did was come off of pin 2 and those large disc caps you saw there, they put 2 0.01s in parallel. And we all know if you put capacitors in parallel, it's the sum of the two. So 0.02 added to the 0.001. When you throw the switch, which ties these caps back to ground. So that's the simple modification they've done. I'm going to go ahead and remove the switch and cut the caps out for now. And then we'll play with this value, the original value of C5, and figure out what sounds best there. And there's that other ground connection right here that's showing up, you can see. And that's the simple modification that was done. Alright, let me get this out next. Just pull out the pliers here and knock this thing out real quick. Okay, there it is. Just a simple switch with the caps in place and this end tied to the chassis ground. Again, adding the 0.01s together for 0.02 in addition to the 0.001. Just increasing the capacitance there, which if I recall correctly would filter more of the treble and pass more of the bass. Let me look at this chassis, see what I can do to square this thing up just a bit. Maybe I can throw a clamp on there, or I can just take it over to my vise without damaging the components here. See if I can clean this up just a bit. Okay, I think I'm going to be able to do this with my pliers actually. I may have went too far in that area. Heck, that's not bad there at all. Let me see if I can get this area here back in just a bit. Alright, not perfect, but that will do. But again, we'll get these other caps out of here. We'll look at these dog bones, check the values of those. Alright, let me look at this one more time here. I may run over there real quick and see if I've got I've got some hole plugs. Let me see if I've got one small enough for this. I think I'll take a little bit of a break here, and I'm going to just take some of my disinfectant wipes here and clean this up a bit. And make a decision here if I want to use any navel jelly or anything underneath the chassis. Don't you just love the simplicity of the design? But just think about the value added and the connectivity to others for the period of time. Just looking through some of my hole plugs here, and I thought I had a fit that this is a 1/2 inch, and it looks like the hole itself there's 3/8 of an inch. So I think I've got a couple more bags of hole plugs. Let me look and see if I can find my smaller ones. If I can't, I'll just need to pick up one. Alright, let's go ahead and do some of the electronic modifications or upgrades now. I'm going to go ahead and start here with the B plus part of the circuit, so I can get the transformer back in and go ahead and get these caps tacked back in. So one thing I was looking at, of course we know how these were mounted here. This is the center tap location for the transformer, and it's also one of the connection points for the fill coil. Is called out here. So you can see one capacitor here again. If you guys had a chance to catch the other video, you can see it connects here. It's not tied to the chassis ground, and that's exactly what we have here. Because again, once I get the transformer back in, it will tie into this point here. I thought about maybe using the cap and just kind of jump across, but I'm going to neaten things up here, and I'm going to just go ahead and put a terminal strip in, I think right in this area, and just make this thing a lot cleaner. So let me go grab the terminal strip that I want to use. If you're new to the hobby, you might as well get you numerous different types of terminal strips. You'll find them helpful. Then you're not turning around and ordering one or two at a time. So let me just kind of go through these, do a little brainstorming, decide how I want to get everything mounted, and we'll come back and kind of do a dry fit here. Make sure everything works. And on a temporary basis, to get the transformer back in, again I'm holding that first RF coil here in place, and here's what I've decided to use. This is the terminal strip, and it's referred to as a DS4D. So again, 4 lugs, and of course I have a ground if I would choose to use it in the center, but I won't do that. I'll go ahead and connect a point back to the chassis ground over to here. Then when I tie my transformer in, I'll just tie my transformer lead in here as well. So what I'm going to do is just take a nut here and tighten this down. Sorry about blocking the camera there. So that's kind of the look that we'll have. Thought about reusing these caps, but I think well, if I need to, I will. But let me go up here and look and see if I've got some caps. Again, when we looked at the schematic earlier, it was showing C8 and C7 as 4 microfarads. I'm going to go ahead and probably still use 8s or 10s, and the radio should perform well there. And then what I'll do, you can see my tie-in point here is filament number 1, and again that's representing the way I rolled these out was pin number 1 will be my plus side. So I'm going to come off pin number 1 here, and I'll probably take this B plus lead that you see here and coil it up, because I want to leave a tie-in point here for my transformer, where my filament line comes in and takes advantage of this bigger eyelet that's been cleaned out here. And we'll take a lead here, red, since it's B+, and we'll dress it up and just have it run right through here and back up into this area here. Then we'll tie the first capacitor in this direction from plus to negative, and the two pluses will tie together for both caps, but remember one cap goes to this area where the fill coil attaches, and the other goes to chassis ground. So we'll have one connection point here, one connection point here, and I'll solder a lead up probably from here back to here. Just one of many boxes that I keep some of my parts and pieces in. I've got the majority of my electrolytics here in this section, so let me dig through them here and see if I've got the matching values that I want to use. Okay, I think I'm going to just go back with 8s. That should be fine. Again, for this radio, I'm not expecting great performance out of it, and I've got a couple 8s here rated at 450. I think that will suffice. Alright, let me pop this terminal strip back out just for a second here. One thing I wanted to share as well, I like to rough up these terminal strips just to make sure I get a better solder connection. I found at times they seem to have a, I don't know, just a coating or something over them that doesn't allow a good connection. So I'll hit them here on both sides. And even though I don't have intentions right now to use this as a ground, I'll go ahead and do the same for this bottom one as well, just in case I change my mind. For those that may just be joining the hobby here early on, again, just remember the polarity of your caps here. You can see again we've got the negative with the arrow going to the right. So again, that indicates the negative lead is on this side, positive here. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I tell you what I'm going to do. I just kind of going through it in my mind. I could stack these on top of each other, but I think I'm going to mount one here, and then the second one, I can hold it in my hand here, will be right back here. And again, we'll have the values facing up, so the next person that needs to come in here and do any troubleshooting, all the values are facing toward them. But what I'll do is just leave the leads long enough. I'm going to have it up here in the beginning so I can get to this area for the fastener when we take this out on a temporary basis and get the transformer mounted, and then we'll tuck it back in. Alright, let's go ahead and get this first cap in here. And again, you can see I'm using 8 microfarad, 450 volt. I've got some shrink tubing on here. And I'm going to go ahead and place this somewhere in this area for now. Then we'll form it up here in just a bit. Let me get this up here where it needs to be. Alright, that's good for now. I'm going to just let it dangle there. Let me get a piece of red lead wire, and we'll go from here back to here. And then I'm going to loop it through as well from this terminal strip here back to here for the second capacitor. Because remember, both positives tie together. Okay, again I want to reserve this bigger cutout here in the tube socket for the filament winding for the transformer. So I'm going to take advantage, or try to take advantage, of this existing B+ wire, this running through one of the smaller holes. And you can see what I'm doing here. It's just forming an eye for my new lead to go through as such, and then we'll loop it back around and solder it up. And again, that still leaves this free when we tie in the transformer. I've already tinned the soldering iron. I'll heat it one more time, and let's get a little solder here on this wire. And we'll let that cool just a bit. You can see we're going back to about this point. I'm going to cut some of this extra off that we won't need. And there's my loop that I talked about. We'll bring that up and close it. And I'm not going to solder that yet. I'm going to let that just reside right there until we bring the transformer in, and then I'll tidy up all of this. So again, this will be running in this area, and then I want to leave just a little bit of extra. I think I'll bring it in and tie it in as such about right here. Okay. And you can see here I'm just forming the negative lead here that we spoke about. And again, I've got this where I can rotate it up for now, but the final resting position will be somewhere in this area right here. That's what I'd like to see. And the other cap will be on this side. And again, you'll recall here that we'll bring this one through this terminal strip here as such. Okay, they'll be cleaned up in just a bit, but I think that gives you a general idea. Okay, and you can see we'll fire up the big guy here in just a minute, and I'll create a loop. As such, and see if we can get that to lay down somewhere in this area. I'll take some sandpaper and rough this up after we remove the old solder. So let me get that out of the way for now. Alright, let me just double check myself, make sure the schematic matches what my dry fit looks like, and we'll go ahead and solder all these points up, with the exception of this one, which we'll need to tie in again back over to this location. Everything looks correct, so let's see if we can get this soldered up nice and neat here. And you can see I'm just heating up the more or less the work area or the joint itself, and I'm just letting the solder flow back toward it. Alright, let's get this other lead here, and the lead dressing, you can see where this old wire had been cut off underneath, just laying down here, and someone again had used this just kind of over the top, but I think I'll just come straight down through here and right behind the tube socket here and come right back up to this location. So let's get all this cleaned up down here off of this terminal strip. You kind of see the leftovers here. Find my solder sucker here. Hit this a couple times. Alright, let me get a little solder here on the soldering iron. And let's see if I can keep my hands out of the way. If I can get this to melt here. There we go. See if I can stand that up without breaking this one off. Alright, let me get a little alcohol here and clean this up. Still got a big glob of solder down here as well. Alright, that looks better. Go ahead and clean up here around that ground connection as well. Okay, I'll clean up the length here in just a bit. And again, the routing I'm going to take, I think, would closely mirror what would have been done before. Okay, I will not be soldering this connection at this point in time here. Again, we'll have our, I think that's our field coil connection comes in here and here. Remember, our output transformer was down here, so I'm going to just let that be. Let's go ahead and get it dressed in over here and get it tied in and soldered up to this electrolytic here. And then we'll go ahead and get this connection here to the ground side. That will wrap up on the B plus side of it as far as the electrolytics. And that's probably where we'll end the day. So we're getting close, folks. Kind of got a bad angle there. It was hard to see for a second what I was doing. Again, we'll clean this up aesthetically here in just a bit because that's always important in my mind. But it's kind of what we were after there. Again, you can see both caps mounted. They're oriented in a position where you can easily see the values. And do some easy troubleshooting here as well. So again, we'll leave this unsoldered at this point in time, as well as this connection point here, here, and here. Let's wrap up here by getting the ground connection here. So let me get the Big Daddy soldering iron here hooked up. Okay, again, I'll be using my Big Daddy soldering iron here, but the secret sauce again is what Paul shared at Mr. Carlson's lab. What a bright individual. So you can see I'll be using his technique, and I have ever since I watched that little tip that he shared what, a year or so back. So let's get ready to do some work right here on the chassis. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just see if I can free this up here. There we go. Alright, we'll let that cool for a few minutes, then I'm going to take some 60 grit sandpaper and rough that up in that area. Then we'll apply some flux and see if we can get some solder to lie down in that area. Okay, I hope it's been long enough. If it hasn't, I'll let you know. And it hasn't. Alright, maybe I can hold it from right here. Just picking the chassis up a little bit because I don't want to be bouncing up and down on that RF coil. I think that's nice and shiny there. So let me get a little flux here. If I can get it to come off my screwdriver. There we go. Alright, first thing I'm trying to do is just get a bead of solder down and get the chassis hot enough here that it will adhere. Alright, there we go. And we'll clean up that flux here in just a bit. Let's see if I can just keep it there now. And not move it. Okay, we'll let that continue to cool down. Then we'll try to move it around just a bit. And then we'll check the DC resistance as well. Let's make sure we got a nice connection point. Let's get in here and clean up some of the flux. Okay, looks like she's cooled down now. Yeah, it looks like we've got a nice connection there. Let's home it out and see what we got. Well, you can't get better than 0. Alright, looks good to me. Just go back here and just do a little housekeeping on the areas that I worked, just to clean those up. Folks, thanks again for watching here on day number 9, I believe it was. And you can see how well this cleaned up here. We'll pick up here on day number 10, and there's not a lot left to do, but I'm not sure how much time I can devote here in the next day or so. Got some other things to take care of, so we'll see. And again, for those that are watching, I'm publishing these videos as I have time, so some of the work has already been done, but I promise you I'm not at a point where I've fired the radio back up. We'll do that together, see what happens. Again, I appreciate you guys following this series.